Why, hello there, beautiful people, and welcome back to the Titans franchise. You're on Madden NFL 24, and this is going to be my offseason recap for the year one offseason. For those of you who don't know, I ended up redoing the offseason because the first time around I ended up playing through some of the games, but I wasn't liking the sliders I was playing on. Now, granted, I had a winning record when I decided to restart it, but I decided to start out fresh because I didn't have a save for after the first offseason. So this is the redo, and this is the one I'm going to stick with. So let's get it going. First, we're going to look at the playoff matchups. We have the Steelers beat the Browns in the wild card round. We have the Niners beat the Eagles by 2 scores. The Bengals just barely edging out the Raiders. The Falcons beat the division rival Panthers. The Bills beat the Ravens in overtime 26-20, and the Vikings also win in overtime over the Packers 41-35. In the divisional round, the Bengals are able to beat the Colts 22-16. The Falcons take care of business against the 1-seeded Cowboys, so both 1 seeds go out in the divisional round. Then you have the Bills lose to the Steelers 31-14, and the Vikings just barely beating the Niners 24-23. In the conference championship games, you have the Steelers beating the Bengals 17-3, and you have the Falcons taking care of business against the Vikings 20-13. So we're getting the Falcons-Steelers Super Bowl. That is pretty interesting. I don't know many people who had that on their bingo cards. But anyways, in the Super Bowl, the Falcons absolutely smashed the Steelers 31-10, and they have won their first Super Bowl. So they finally got the monkey of the 28-3 blown lead off their backs, and they finally win their Super Bowl in their 3rd attempt. Desmond Ridder actually ended up being the Super Bowl MVP, which is crazy because he got benched IRL, but I won a Super Bowl with the Falcons in my 2nd year of my Madden 23 franchise, so it's not all that surprising. Patrick Mahomes won MVP, Mike McCarthy won Coach of the Year, Jonathan Taylor was the Offensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett Defensive Player of the Year, Tyjae Spears was the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and Joey Porter Jr. was the Defensive Rookie of the Year. So now we go to re-signings, and as you can see, we have a lot of cap space. I'm going to try to re-sign Tier Tart here, but he is going to test free agency despite a pretty solid deal for him. But we'll see if we can sign him in free agency. Sean Murphy-Bunting I also offer a contract to for 3 years and 21.2 over those 3 years, and he decides to accept the contract. I did have my reservations of offering Christian Fulton a deal, but I decided to offer him a 1-year prove-it deal, and he is going to end up declining this one as he wants to test for agency. Julius Chestnut is somebody I didn't really utilize as much as I wanted to this year, but I did end up signing him back. I also wanted to sign Jack Gibbons back for some depth at middle linebacker, but he declined. Jalen Samuels, who was essentially my fullback and my 3rd down back, ends up signing on a 1-year deal. And Danico Autry at 34 years old, I decided to bring him back for one last hurrah, and he decided to accept the contract, so we'll get him for 1 more year. So now we'll go to free agency, and we have so much cap space to spend, so we can definitely afford to go after some marquee players if we so choose. There are plenty of quarterbacks who are available, but we have Will Levis, so we're good on that. But I do need a replacement at center as I let Aaron Brewer leave in free agency, and I decided to go after Tyler Biadasz, who spent the last 4 years with the Dallas Cowboys. I'll offer him a 2-year deal. I also decided to go after John Runyon Jr. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, his father, John Runyon Sr., who was more well known for playing for the Eagles, actually played for the Titans back when they went to the Super Bowl in 2000. So we'll see if we can sign his son. I also decided to get some depth on the defensive line, so I decided to go after Sebastian Joseph Day, formerly of the Chargers. I also try to offer a contract to Tier Tart, who is being offered by 4 other teams as well. But we're going to give him a player-friendly deal this time because I really want to keep Tart on this defense. And I also decided to look in the corner room and try to bring back Christian Fulton. And I'm going to give him a 1-year deal, just a 1-year prove-it deal. And if he doesn't do well, I definitely feel good about possibly trading him. But I want that option at very least. I actually withdraw my deal to Joseph Day because I actually want to sign Donovan Peoples-Jones because I'm planning on trading DeAndre Hopkins for draft picks at this point. So we offer him a 3-year deal. And after the first eval period, we end up signing 3 of the guys we were going after. Tier Tart is back with the Titans. We also get Donovan Peoples-Jones and John Runyon. So now I'll go after Joseph Day. I just wanted the opportunity to try to sign Peoples-Jones, and we made it work. I also decided to pick up Nick Foles because he has the mentor tag, and I feel like Will Levis could definitely use that. And the same thing for Sammy Watkins. I want to be able to develop Treylon Burks a little bit more, as well as Kyle Phillips. And I do the exact same thing at tight end as I bring in Richard Rodgers, who could mentor Chika Okonkwo and Josh Wiley. And I do the same thing at corner. We have a lot of young corners, so Xavier Rhodes, the former Florida State corner, is somebody I offered as well. After the second eval period, Christian Fulton re-signs with us, so we could end up trading him now, but we'll see. We also got Tyler Biadasz and Sebastian Joseph Day to sign as well. So now we're going to offer a few more players. Cornelius Lucas is somebody I'm looking at who also has a mentor tag. He could definitely help out our young linemen, including Peter Skoronski. And I decided to do the same thing for Christian Kirksey to help out Nakobe Dean a little bit. Azeez Al-Shaair will still be starting, but you know. Looking at the mock draft, number 4, we have Caleb Williams potentially going to the Rams, and currently we're being mocked to pick up Joe Alt, the left tackle out of Notre Dame. We definitely need some help at left tackle because Andre Dillard just ain't it. And I also decided to pick up Cordero Patterson to help out Tajay Spears, Julius Chestnut, and our other young running backs. And looking at the signings, we end up getting most of the guys that we've gone after, if not all of them. So now we'll go to mock draft number 5, and all of a sudden, the Rams are mocked to get Jared Verse out of Florida State. I'm confused. And we're going to look at free agent signings here as Kirk Cousins goes back to Washington. Sam Darnold goes to the Vikings, and Baker Mayfield signs back with the Rams. But I don't really feel like that's enough to justify not drafting Caleb Williams. He's right there for you. You need a quarterback. Matthew Stafford ain't it, but they're still going to go after him. That's interesting. Devin Singletary signs with the Vikings. Both A.J. Dillon and Antonio Gibson and Darrell Williams all go to the Eagles. Gabe Neighbors, the fullback, is the only one signed. He goes to Jacksonville. Amari Cooper also is a Viking as well. Minnesota's spending big money in free agency right now. Mike Williams goes to the Panthers. Keenan Allen to the Texans. That's going to be fun to deal with. And you can just see the rest of the signings here. Mike Gesicki will go over to the Lions. So they're just stomping all over Sam Laporta's feet on that one. No real big name tackles were signed at left tackle at very least. Brandon Kipper is the highest signed one. And then we have Damian Lewis going over to the Vikings, so they get a pretty good left guard. No centers outside of Tyler Biadasz were signed. Cesar Ruiz will go to the Lions. Terrence Steele goes to Philly. And there's a guy named Yosh there. Mike Dana gets signed by the Panthers. He's the highest rated left end who got signed. Michael Pierce goes to the Bears. DJ Jones goes to the Lions. Cleveland Farrell signs with the Cardinals, as does Shaq Lawson. Frankie Louvu ends up going to the Bengals. Sione Takitaki to the Bears. Now, Bobby Wagner's going to the Vikings as well as Devin White. So the Vikings are really selling out to get back to the playoffs and possibly make a Super Bowl run. Devin Bush signs with Philly, so he moves cities in Pittsburgh. And there's some more cornerback signings right here. Adrian Amos goes to the Eagles. Jaron Kearse goes to the Vikings. No kickers were signed, but a bunch of punters were. Looking at our free agent signings, of course, we got Tier Tart, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Cordero Patterson, Christian Fulton, John Runyon, Tyler Biadasz, Sebastian Joseph Day, Xavier Rhodes, Christian Kirksey, Sammy Watkins, Cornelius Lucas, Richard Rodgers, and Nick Foles. So we get all of our signings. I decided to ship off Malik Willis over to the Denver Broncos. And I pick up Nate Sudfeld and a 5th round pick, which is, I think, a little bit more than we probably deserve to get for Willis. But with Russell Wilson really just not playing well at this point, they might as well give Willis a shot. So we'll see if he ends up starting there. We also decided to trade Kevin Byard over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Carlton Davis and multiple draft picks as well. So we got a better deal than Tennessee got IRL, because Carlton Davis is a pretty good corner, and we're going to be pairing him up with his former teammate, Sean Murphy-Bunting. So now all we need is Jamel Dean, and we'll have the Buccaneers' top 3 corners from the past few years. And to replace Byard, we end up sending DeAndre Hopkins and a few draft picks over to the Lions for CJ Gardner-Johnson, a 2nd-round pick and a 5th-round pick and a 7th-round pick in this year's draft. So we have plenty of draft capital, and we're still getting pretty good players as well. So now we'll go to the draft, and we'll see if the Rams really do go through with not drafting Caleb Williams #1 overall, which would be just a stupid decision, and they do it. They end up drafting Jared Verse, who I think is going to be a great player, but they definitely needed Caleb Williams. Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to the Arizona Cardinals with pick #2. So Kyler Murray finally has another big threat receiver, and they definitely need him over there in Arizona. Chicago decides to go with Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia. Now, he is a great player. I don't know if he's like a top 3 pick, though, but Chicago thinks so. Caleb Williams ends up going to Tampa Bay. Obviously, they just lost Baker, and their highest overall quarterback was Trace McSorley, so no surprise there. With the Cardinals' 2nd pick, they go with Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama, so they definitely get some much-needed secondary help, and hopefully they can keep Budda Baker happy. The Saints end up drafting Olu Fashanu, who was on the top of my board, so there goes that. Joe Alt ends up getting picked by the Lions, so now I'm in some trouble, and I don't understand why the Lions drafted him when they have a left tackle already. Cameron Kinchens out of Miami goes to the Chargers, and Broncos end up picking another guy I was looking at in Chop Robinson, the D-end/edge rusher out of Penn State. So I'm running out of options now. Drake May goes to the Giants, so I guess they're looking to replace Daniel Jones sooner rather than later. The Dolphins get J.C. Latham out of Alabama, another guy I was looking at. And the Commies decide to get J.T. Tuimoloau. I believe that's how you say his name. So now we're up to pick at number 16, and there are plenty of players I'm looking at, including Keon Coleman out of Florida State, who I really am a fan of. Dallas Turner will also be a pretty good pick here if I decide to get him. Emeka Ibuka's available still. There are plenty of players that I probably should have drafted, but I decided that building the offensive line was the most important thing that I could probably do with this pick. And so, at pick number 16, I decided to go with Amarius Mims, the right tackle out of Georgia. And I do plan on playing him at left tackle instead, just because I feel like Nicholas Petty-Frere has developed pretty well. Amarius Mims is a 90th strength player, and he's a hidden development player as well. Now, obviously, the last offensive lineman that Tennessee drafted from Georgia didn't pan out so well. If you know, you know, but we'll see if Mims ends up being any better. I mean, you look at his pass blocking. He's an A pass block, an A lead block. So he could end up being a really good player for us. And now we'll go to the 2nd round. The Bears actually picked Bo Nix right before me. Not that I was looking to pick him or anything like that, but with Justin Fields still there, that just seemed peculiar to me. So we do have a bunch of needs here, but we do have multiple 2nd round picks. And with this first one, I decide to go after Johnny Wilson out of Florida State. We missed out on Keon Coleman. Now, his catching in this game is really bad. He drops a lot of passes IRL, so that doesn't really surprise me. But hey, we need a big, tall receiver to replace D-Hop, and that's what we're going to get in Johnny Wilson. And unfortunately, he is just a normal dev. He has 92 speed and 94 acceleration, but his agility is at an 84. So that's a bit worrisome, but we need another receiver. Obviously, I didn't want to just run with Burks and Peoples-Jones and Phillips. So Johnny Wilson is who I decided to pick here, and hopefully he pans out. Now, the Eagles ended up picking Michael Penix Jr. for God knows what reason when Jalen Hurts is still there. I don't know, this EA logic is something else. But I decided to pick up defensive tackle Howard Cross III out of Notre Dame. I just feel like we need a bit more help on the D-line, and I do plan on playing him at end, so maybe he'll be an understudy to Denico Autry for a year, and then be the starter across from Jeffrey Simmons next year. But he has 90 strength, so he's definitely a very strong player. And his finesse and power moves are both A's as well, so this man is going to be a problem, and his awareness as well, too. So now we'll go to our final 2nd round pick as Delmar Glaze out of Maryland goes to Washington, so he stays in state. And I decided that we're going to go after Gabriel Murphy, left outside linebacker out of UCLA, and he ends up being a hidden dev as well. 85 strength, 82 speed, 84 acceleration, 81 agility. So he's definitely a quick player, and he has a pursuit. Everything else is up in the air, but that hidden dev definitely makes me feel good. We're going to go all the way to the 4th round, as we didn't have a 3rd round pick here. And I decided to go tight end here to get a little bit more depth at tight end and pick another Florida State player, this time in Jaheim Bell, who is probably the most athletic tight end in the whole draft. So we get another athletic tight end. We might have to get a blocking tight end at some point because Chig isn't the best blocker, Wiley's not a good blocker at all, and it doesn't look like Bell's a great run blocker. He's a great pass blocker, it seems like, but 88 speed, 88 acceleration, 88 agility. I mean, we got a pretty good player, even though he's just a normal dev, and his overall actually is not going to be very high, just a little spoiler. But I'm actually planning on moving him to fullback, so we'll see if that ends up being a good decision or not, but we finally have a guy who can get out of the backfield, so maybe Jalen Samuels will just be the 3rd down back. In the 5th round now, we don't have a ton of huge needs right here, but I decided to reinforce the offensive line a little bit more with KT Leviston out of Kansas State. And he actually ends up being a pretty good player. He's 2nd of all left tackles in bench press, both at the NFL Combine and the College Pro Day. So he ended up having a really, really good offseason. And I decided, why not let it fly, especially with that elite strength. And Leviston is a 93 strength player. He's just a normal dev, but 93 strength for a rookie is pretty amazing. He has A, impact blocking, A, lead blocking, B, awareness, and run blocking power. Everything else is up in the air. D, injury is kind of worrisome, and maybe that's why he fell so far in the draft. But he'll be able to compete for a spot in the O-line as well in the future. So now we are in the 5th round still, going to my 9th pick, and I decided to go quarterback here. We're going to go with KJ Jefferson out of Arkansas, and this man is a big, athletic, strong-arm quarterback. He reminds me a lot of Steve McNair, God rest his soul. But his game is very similar to what McNair's was. He's very similar to Ben Roethlisberger as well, just being big, athletic, and being able to throw the ball down the field. So in the 6th round, we decided to go back into Georgia to go pick somebody. We're going to get Kamari Lassiter, the cornerback out of Georgia. And again, we have a pretty full cornerback room with us re-signing Sean Murphy-Bunting and Christian Fulton, and also trading for Carlton Davis. So Lassiter is going to have to compete with those guys and Roger McCreary, and don't sleep on Eric Garrer either. But good pick there. And I decided to trade back my other 6th round pick back to Cleveland for 2 of their picks in the future. So we'll get a 6th and 7th next year for Cleveland for trading this pick. So W draft capital, I guess. So now in the 7th round, we have 3 more picks in this draft. And with the first one that we have, we're going to pick up Sheridan Jones, the cornerback out of Clemson. And he's a pretty raw, talented corner. We'll have to see what he's able to do on the field, but hey, in the 7th round, I don't think it's too bad of a pick. His tackling's pretty good, as you can see. And we decided to trade our 2nd 7th round pick over to the Houston Texans for both of their 7ths next year. So we're just stacking up draft capital for next year as well. We're going to be a pretty good team when it comes to capital as far as drafting goes. And with our final pick of the draft, we decided to go after George Holani out of Boise State. And honestly, he's exactly what we need at running back, although he's going to have to compete with Julius Chestnut for carries at this point. He has decent enough speed for somebody his size, but he's more of a power back, and that's exactly what we're looking for at this point. So looking at our draft class, I feel like most of these picks were pretty solid. Maybe not the highest overall players in the world, but overall, I feel like we had a solid draft. And the last move I make in the offseason before we go to the preseason is trading Christian Fulton. I referenced it multiple times, I hinted at it, and we finally did it. We sent him over to the 49ers for right tackle Jalen Moore and 3 picks, a 3rd, 5th, and 6th in this upcoming draft. So we finally offload him, and we're just going to roll with Murphy Bunting, Carlton Davis, and Roger McCreary at corner. So we have finally got through the offseason, and now we're heading into year 2 of the Titans franchise. Next video will be the entirety of the preseason. We're going to play all 3 games, and then we will get the regular season started. So if you made it this far into the video, I love you like a fat kid loves cake, but make sure you guys hit that like button or the dislike button if you dislike the video. Turn your notifications on to join the notification gang, or I guess sub first. I mean, what am I talking about? Yeah, hit the sub button and turn your notifications on. Anyways, if you made it this far in the video, leave a comment with the hashtag season 2 hype.